Hi, this is the part 2 of the Destruction of Sennachrib. So we've already looked at the first 3 stanzas, so we're looking at the last 3 stanzas in this poem. And just a quick recap in terms of the macro. So remember that we've said that this is written in quatrains, and we do have an AABB structure, so that makes it quite easy to read. We've got the rhyming couplets, wide, pride, surf and turf, all the way through the poem, and we are echoing, or the poet is purposely echoing the syntax of this ongoing story, and almost to show how easy, remember, it is that we said that mankind can be destroyed, almost as if the fluidity of the poem is the driving force of the power of God. So that's echoed through the entire structure of this poem. So let's pick up where we left off, which is the 4th stanza. So, and there laid the steed with his nostril all wide. So remember, at this point we've had the angel come down and with ease has breathed over the Assyrian army and destroyed them. And we focus even more on the destruction of this army and the detail of this army's death and destruction. When you have a look at this stanza, you can definitely see the semantic field of death here. So I am going to use my vocabulary colour just to identify some of those references to death. So lay, colt, so there lay the steed, a steed, someone riding a horse, with his nostrils all wide, but through it there rolled not the breath of his pride, and the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf and cold as the spray of the rock-beating surf. So we've definitely got this semantic field of pain, death. And remember, we never just say it's a semantic field, we say what's it semantic field of. So death, pain, and again, remember we talked about how easy it was up here for the angel of death to breathe. We've got the difficulty in breathing here, and that's not accidental that we've got that juxtaposition, the reference to breathing again, the difficulty, the not breath, the difficulty of breathing and gasping, the pain. And remember, we get that because we've had heaved here as well. So the pain, the difficulty, and obviously cold as a reference to death as well. So all of those there are references to how easy it is to kill a human and mankind. And look at that in comparison to some of the nature language that's been used in this section as well. So I want to use a different colour really. I'll use my intention colour because I think nature's been used intentionally to represent God. So we can see there we've got the turf, the rock beating surf and the spray. We've got references to nature, like it's outpowered humans. And it keeps going. So we've got the spray of the water, reference to rock beating surf. So even the rocks that have had to bear the brunt of nature lives on and survives, where the humans are easily destroyed. So it sets up that contrast. I think more than anything what draws my attention here within this poem is the sin that gets referenced at this point, which is in the 2nd line of this stanza on line 14. But through it there rolled not the breath of his pride. And I think, as just like Poison Tree where it was about wrath, this one here is definitely talking about the intention of pride being a sin. So to have pride, to have this arrogance that because you've got money, because you've got banners and you've got expensive weapons, and because you have power and wealth, should not mean that you look down on others. And actually here it feels like God is teaching them a lesson that pride does not mean that you win, and actually it is your downfall. And the Assyrian army seemed to encapsulate that idea of pride being a sin and what can happen if you are too prideful, essentially, that you die. So I think definitely, particularly when I'm thinking about poison tree, I can see the sins coming across here. Wrath in the first one, and this one definitely being pride. Okay, let's have a look at the penultimate stanza, which is this one here. Again, we've got another reference to a particular rider that is died, and look at the use of the adjectives here. And there lay the rider. Look at that repetition of lay, by the way. Let's use my structure colour to identify that. Now, this lay is a euphemism. Euphemism means a polite way of saying something. So, spelled like this. So this is a polite way of saying died, murdered, killed. Instead of being quite blunt, it writes it in a nicer way. And I wonder if the poet has done that on purpose, because it's almost written like a moral story in the Bible, so it's not meant to be gruesome. It's kind of, the language is in sync with having a broader audience perhaps, and teaching a child a lesson maybe, rather than it being more gruesome. It relies on knowing what lay means. So when there lay the rider, distorted and pale. Again, these are references to death, which again is linking back to that idea of they have no power. They're, humans are easily destroyed. We're just an animal of God. We're nothing more. With the dew on his brow. So dew on his brow here is a reference to the fact he's had to work really hard. This is like dew as in sweat on his forehead. That he's had to work really hard. So it doesn't matter what effort has been put in. God will always win. So there's been some serious effort here. And the rust on his armour. So again, the soldiers have been broken in. They've had to work hard. But it's even, rust is created through the chemicals and the air and what's been going on. So almost like nature's affected the man-made, can destroy man-made equipment. And when we talk about nature, we're talking about God, essentially. So nature and God kind of go hand in hand in this poem. So nature destroying man-made objects. Anything man-made, really. And then we get this personification here, because we've gone from talking about a single rider and a single steed, soldier on horse, to the tents were all silent. The banners alone. So the personification of the tents are silent. They're talking about obviously the soldiers in the tents are all dead. So there's a collective there. They've not just killed one person, they've killed the entire army. So it goes from being quite small. We've had the description of killing one person to the destruction of everyone. And I've unintentionally used the title of the poem there, but perhaps there is that link back to the title. It is mass destruction that they've placed on this army. So the personification of the tents is representative of the fact that the whole army has died, or should I say been killed, destroyed by God. The banners alone, so they've been left, the soldiers are now dead, the lances uplifted and the trumpets unblown. So we get this list here, which is structure. Look at all these man-made things. We've got the tents not touched, the banners left, the lances, so the weapons created, and even the musical instruments. Nothing that humankind could throw at God is going to win. Nothing humans do is going to win. And I think that list kind of emphasises that total destruction and that powerlessness as well. I think, in fact, I like that word. I think I would use that if I was writing this essay. Powerlessness. The powerlessness of humans. Okay, and then the very last stanza. Lots of words here that reference very specifically the story. So remember that this entire poem is is based on the story from the Old Testament in which God is destroying King Sennacherib's army because they attacked the holy city of Jerusalem. Okay, so we've got this massive army attacking a holy city. Okay, so the widows of Ashur are loud in their wail, and look at the use of widows and wail for the alliteration here. Widows meaning that their husbands who have gone to war have died. So there's that use of that noun on purpose is already, if you didn't know beforehand, saying everybody is dead. They couldn't repeat that enough in this poem. Every line is indicating we've killed them, God's killed them. Just in case you didn't know, this word is telling you, just in case you didn't know, they're even crying about it, they're sobbing about it. Constantly repeating the fact that they have died, and they are dead. And the idols are broken in the temple of Baal. So here we have this reference to the fact that King Sennacherib and the Assyrians believed in different gods and different religions, and there's a reference to that here as well. Anybody who doesn't believe in God is being referenced as a Gentile. The might of the Gentile unsmote by the sword. So anyone who is religious or believes in the Old Testament is saved, unsmoked, not struck by the sword. So it's almost like God will protect you if you believe. I don't really want to use my structure colour for that. I think intention, definitely. So here, the implication in the second to last line is that if you believe, God will protect you. Unsmoked by the sword. We kind of get this sibilance to heighten that. Unsmoked by the sword. It doesn't have to be the first letter, by the way. It's just the sound that's repeated. Unsmote and sod. You can hear the S's. You can even hear it there. Has melted like snow in the glance of the Lord. And we finish on that simile, that imagery, to represent how easy it is. Melted like snow. That's how much power God has. That he can melt people like snow. Like, it's so easy to do. It's so easy to kill, to destroy, because he has ultimate power. And we get this repetition of the exclamation mark, which came up earlier. I shouldn't have circled it in my language colour, actually. It's a structural thing because it's punctuation. But again, we get that repetition of finishing on that exclamation mark, that power, which kind of leaves me with the one colour I've not used in this poem, which is tone. So we really do need to consider tone. Let me just move the camera down. So let's consider some of the tones in this poem, and let's remind ourselves what tone is. So let's just have a flick back. So remember, when we talk about tone, we're talking about the emotion of the narrator, if there is one, and the intended effect on the reader. So if we look at the whole of this poem, I think we've constantly established that we are meant to fear God, respect God and the rules, and his rules. We definitely are intended to see that pride is sinful and wealth is not a protection or reason to destroy others, I think. I would remind you of the couple of things that I mentioned at the beginning as well, for those people that are aiming for the top marks, particularly if you want to be able to comment on a macro level. I'll just take you to the top of my notes and remind you that the anapest, sorry, let me turn that over so it's easy to see. The anapest is the structure of the lines it's the syllables and the meter of the line. So have a look at that. But remember, if you're going to talk about it, it can't just be a statement. You have to actually link it to the intention, the attention, and also the tone of the poem. So what could it mean? Why is it like that? I hope these notes are useful. And remember, when I post it, don't just send me back like a carbon copy of this. I really like seeing the students that have not just taken my notes, but have done their own research and have looked at it, because this isn't everything that you can say, nor is it the only thing you can say. Lots of different annotations and analysis of poetry means that you can have several different meanings, and that's the sign of a person who can analyse poetry well, that there's not just one meaning. All right, thank you for listening and watching again, and I hope it was useful.